The sun hovered low over the parade ground, casting long shadows that stretched across the polished concrete, giving the space an almost theatrical feeling. Sergeant Luna Reyes stood at the edge of the formation, her heart beating steadily despite the tension that clung to the air like a heavy fog. Around her, 200 cadets were lined in precise rows, their uniforms crisp, their posture rigid, faces set in expressions of disciplined attention. At the center, Colonel Marcus Linton cleared his throat, his eyes scanning the formation before landing on Luna with a mixture of cold authority and barely concealed irritation. "Sergeant Reyes," he began, voice loud enough for the cadets to hear but measured, controlled. "Your repeated procedural violations and independent decisions beyond the scope of your orders have left me no choice but to strip you of your rank, effective immediately." A ripple of murmurs traveled through the cadets, stifled by the invisible weight of Linton's presence. Luna stood perfectly still, letting the words wash over her like rain, cataloging every detail, the slight tremor in the colonel's left hand, the way the sunlight caught the edges of the insignia on her uniform, the taut anticipation in the shoulders of the cadets. She did not blink or flinch. Outwardly calm, she felt the mental clock ticking, noting the arrangement of the formation, the cadence of the marching band practicing in the distance, the nervous shuffle of boots on the concrete, all while internally preparing for what she knew would happen next. The public nature of this reprimand was meant to humiliate, but Luna understood that there was more at play than procedural discipline. Colonel Linton stepped closer, his polished boots scraping against the pavement, and gestured to the insignia on Luna's chest. "Hand over your badges, your credentials, your uniform authority. Effective immediately, you are no longer recognized as a sergeant by this command." Luna obeyed without hesitation, slowly unclipping the badges and handing them over, keeping her eyes level with the colonel's. "You have repeatedly demonstrated that your judgment supersedes orders," Linton said, his voice rising slightly as if trying to assert dominance over the heavy tension in the air. "Insubordination in this institution cannot be tolerated." The cadets stood silently, their collective gaze fixed on Luna, some exchanging glances of shock and curiosity. Luna, however, felt none of the panic the scene was meant to inspire. Her mind was elsewhere, running through the hidden layers of authority she had always known, the covert instructions she had received from sources outside the local hierarchy. She had anticipated this moment long before it arrived, and she treated the humiliation like a performance in which she had already memorized every line. As Linton droned on, she quietly noted the way the sun reflected off the polished insignia, the slight unevenness in the rows of cadets, and the pattern of the shadows on the ground, filing them away for analysis. Her thoughts were methodical, her emotions contained. Anger, fear, and regret were luxuries she could not afford, not in front of so many witnesses, not when the truth of her authority lay in layers that no one here would yet understand. From the corner of the parade ground, a man in civilian clothes approached, his steps brisk but deliberate. Luna recognized him immediately, David Hale, a figure whose presence carried authority that no uniform could convey. He carried a sealed folder, thick and heavy, its contents capable of shifting the narrative of this entire ceremony. Colonel Linton noticed him last, his expression flickering between irritation and confusion. "And who is this?" Linton barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a whip. David stopped a few paces from formation, holding the folder against his chest. "I am here to clarify the official standing of Sergeant Reyes," he said evenly. The cadets stirred, whispers beginning to ripple through the ranks. Luna kept her posture straight, mask of calm intact, as David opened the folder and handed over a verification letter confirming her true authority as a covert operative with jurisdiction beyond the local command. The shock in Linton's eyes was immediate. His voice faltered as he attempted to regain control. This cannot be," he stammered, struggling to process that the entire ceremony he orchestrated as a display of power was now undermined by evidence he could not dispute. Luna's mind catalogued his every reaction, noting the tension in his jaw, the twitch of his fingers, the way his polished shoes scraped the concrete as he stepped back slightly. Around her, The cadets' faces reflected a mixture of awe, confusion, and disbelief. The narrative they had been given was collapsing in real time, replaced by the startling revelation that their assumptions about authority and leadership had been incomplete, perhaps entirely wrong. "Commander Reyes," David said formally, and Luna straightened, the cadets' mouths going dry at the unexpected shift in title. The air seemed to pulse with energy as she walked toward the front of the formation, her boots clicking sharply on the parade ground. Linton's hands clenched at his sides, his authority evaporating in the presence of the verification. "Effective immediately, all previous reprimands are suspended," David continued. Luna turned slightly, addressing the cadets directly. "Leadership is not about the insignia you wear or the orders you shout. Leadership is about judgment, resilience, and the quiet strength to act when others hesitate." Her voice carried across the formation, steady and commanding without being loud. She paused, letting her words sink in. Power is often silent, unseen, and unacknowledged. True authority grows from competence, responsibility, and the courage to face consequences that others avoid. The cadets were spellbound. Some straightened instinctively, absorbing the lesson not from a textbook, but from a living example of calm authority under scrutiny. Luna then looked at Linton, her gaze sharp but not hostile. Discipline is important, but blind adherence to hierarchy without understanding the stakes can be dangerous. Remember this lesson well. Linton opened his mouth as if to reply, but no words came. His voice had no weight here. The cadets' understanding of leadership had shifted irreversibly in those few moments, a transformation witnessed firsthand in the unbroken silence that followed her speech. After the formalities concluded, Luna was escorted from the parade ground by David, leaving a stunned formation behind. The cadets whispered among themselves, some still staring in disbelief at the spot where she had stood. Instructors tried to regain control, but the ripple effect of the revelation was undeniable. Linton lingered, staring at the empty space, his mind racing as he attempted to reconcile the humiliation of the public proceedings with the undeniable authority Luna now carried. Records would be altered, explanations diluted, and official statements carefully worded to obscure the truth, but the cadets had already internalized what they had witnessed. Luna, for her part, walked with calm precision, cataloging every reaction, every micro-expression, knowing that these small details would guide her future covert operations. Her authority might be invisible to the outside eye, but it was tangible, grounded in competence, courage, and the knowledge that true leadership often exists beyond public acknowledgement. As she disappeared from view, the weight of her lesson lingered, a quiet but enduring reminder that resilience, accountability, and silent courage define the leaders who shape events behind the scenes, unseen but decisive. Once they were a safe distance from the parade ground, David Hale finally spoke. "Luna, you handled that perfectly." Most would have cracked under the scrutiny of 200 cadets and a colonel determined to humiliate them. Luna's eyes remained forward, scanning the quiet streets outside the base, though her voice was calm. "It wasn't about them, David.
It was about the pattern.
Every reaction, every hesitation, it tells me where weaknesses exist and where trust can fail." David nodded, understanding her methodical perspective. "Do you ever just feel normal?" he asked, half joking, half serious. Luna allowed herself a small smile, but it faded almost instantly. "Normal is a luxury I don't have. Every choice I make has layers of consequence that most people will never see." Her tone was not bitter, only precise. "And that's exactly why people like Linton can't ever understand what I do. They're trapped by the visible hierarchy." David studied her expression, seeing the same quiet intensity that had silenced Linton moments before. "And yet, they'll learn. Slowly, if not today, then eventually. Your lesson was enough to shake them." Luna didn't respond immediately. She knew the cadets had absorbed more than David realized. They had witnessed a leadership that didn't demand recognition, but inspired respect. She thought about the cadets, some still young and naive, and felt the faintest spark of hope. "Good. Let them see that courage isn't always loud, and authority isn't always worn on a chest, she murmured, almost to herself, before continuing her walk with David toward the waiting vehicle. Back at the safe house, Luna shed her uniform and allowed herself to breathe fully for the first time in hours. The walls were lined with maps, digital screens, and encrypted communication devices, a quiet nerve center for operations that existed entirely in the shadows. David approached her, placing the sealed folder on the table. All clear, Luna. Linton will be reassigned, and the official reports are being rewritten. You have 36 hours before anyone realizes what really happened. Luna picked up the folder and skimmed the contents, confirming that every detail matched her expectations. I'm less interested in what they'll think and more interested in what they'll remember, she said. Lessons stick longer when they're not forced but earned through observation. David smiled faintly. And they certainly earned this one. Luna's gaze returned to the screens, noting movements in distant regions, reports of unrest, and potential threats that were invisible to ordinary command structures. We have work to do. Always work to do, she said softly. Public recognition is a distraction. Invisible leadership is where the real outcomes are decided. She paused, almost contemplative. If anyone believes that power is only measured by visibility, they will fail when the unseen threats strike. David nodded again, knowing that Luna's mind was already moving ahead, planning several steps beyond anything a normal officer would consider. Then let's begin, he said, and together they moved into the rhythm of the operation, silent but decisive. Luna's next assignment involved a series of covert interventions designed to prevent incidents that would never make the official reports. She coordinated with local intelligence networks, field agents, and even civilian contacts, creating layers of redundancy that ensured no single failure could compromise the mission. At a small, nondescript building in the outskirts of the city, she met with her team. We're dealing with 2 simultaneous breaches, she explained, tracing lines on a digital map. One in the north sector, one in the south. Timing is critical. No visible presence. No mistakes. Her team nodded, well-trained and disciplined, each member understanding that Luna's calm authority didn't require raised voices or ceremonial titles. It commanded trust because of competence. Remember, she continued, visibility is a trap. We exist to prevent crises before they escalate. The fewer people who know what we do, the safer everyone is. A young recruit hesitated, the weight of responsibility evident in his expression. Luna walked over and placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Courage isn't about risk without thought. It's about understanding the stakes and acting despite them. You're not alone in this. Trust your training, trust each other, and trust me. The recruit straightened, visibly relieved, and Luna returned to her station. She monitored communications, adjusting strategies in real time, making decisions that would affect hundreds of lives, all from behind the veil of secrecy. The night was silent except for the hum of vehicles and the occasional crackle of encrypted radios. Luna worked tirelessly, cross-referencing intelligence reports and field updates, her mind moving faster than any system she used. David occasionally interjected with critical information, but mostly he allowed her to operate alone, knowing that this was her element. You're relentless, he observed once. Luna didn't look up, continuing her calculations. I can't afford to be anything else. Decisions delayed are disasters waiting to happen. She paused, making a critical adjustment to a mission parameter, then leaned back in her chair. Leadership isn't about the applause you receive. It's about the lives you protect when no one is watching. David nodded silently. He had witnessed her discipline in the parade ground, in the field, and now here, quiet, precise, unrelenting. Every action she took carried weight far beyond what the outside world could ever measure. Luna's internal reflection was not ego or pride, but clarity. Every moment of unseen effort built a foundation of trust, resilience, and stability that no ceremony or official title could replicate. By dawn, both operations had concluded successfully. Luna reviewed the final reports, ensuring that every variable had been accounted for and that any potential exposure had been minimized. Her team returned quietly, exchanging tired but satisfied looks. You did well, one agent said softly. Luna offered a brief nod, never one for praise. We did well. Remember, it's not about recognition. It's about results. If no one hears about this, that's a success. She walked to the window, watching the first light spill over the city. The world outside remained oblivious to the chaos that had almost occurred, and that was exactly the way it needed to be. David approached quietly. You ever wonder if they'll ever understand what leadership really is? Luna didn't answer immediately. She turned her gaze to him, calm but firm. Understanding isn't necessary. Learning is. We plant the seeds. The rest grows in time. The room fell silent, filled only with the unspoken agreement that their work was far from over, and that true leadership was never measured by applause, but by resilience, preparation, and the courage to act unseen. Weeks passed, and Luna returned to the rhythms of her covert assignments, each mission a new challenge demanding focus, strategy, and discretion. Reports of Colonel Linton's reassignment trickled in, but Luna paid little attention. Her focus remained on outcomes, not politics. One evening, she convened a small briefing with her team. We've identified emerging threats in 3 key sectors, she said, pointing to the map. They're subtle, almost imperceptible, but the consequences could be catastrophic if ignored. Each of you has a role. Precision, timing, and secrecy are mandatory. Her team listened, absorbing her instructions with the quiet intensity Luna demanded. Remember, leadership is not a title. It is an action. You lead when others cannot, when visibility is denied, and when stakes are highest. She paused, scanning the room. Failures are lessons. Success is invisible. That is how we operate. The agents nodded, fully aligned with her vision. Luna's words were never empty encouragement. They carried authority because she had lived them, proving that courage, competence, and calm decisiveness created leadership that no uniform could replicate. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the cadets who had witnessed the parade ground incident struggled to process what they had seen. Luna's lesson had left an indelible mark, though many could not articulate why. Whispers spread among the students. Some questioned the rigid rules they had followed unquestioningly. Others wondered how authority could exist beyond the visible hierarchy. Instructors, too, were unsettled, realizing that the spectacle of public discipline could never capture the depth of true leadership. Over time, cadets began to emulate qualities they had observed: calm decisiveness, careful observation, and resilience in the face of authority. Luna's example became an unspoken standard, an invisible benchmark for judgment and courage, remembered quietly by those who had witnessed her unwavering poise in the face of public scrutiny. One afternoon, Luna received a coded message indicating a potential security breach in an industrial district several hours away. Without hesitation, she assembled a reconnaissance team and departed under the cover of dusk. As they approached the site, Luna briefed the team with precise instructions, emphasizing timing, observation, and restraint. Our presence cannot be known. Every move must be deliberate. Do not react emotionally, react logically, she said, her tone calm but commanding. The agents nodded, absorbing the weight of responsibility without question. Luna led them through the shadows, silently cataloging every patrol, every camera, every civilian movement. She observed patterns invisible to casual observers and adjusted their approach in real time, demonstrating the quiet power of strategic foresight. By the time the operation concluded, the breach had been neutralized without incident, and no one outside the operation would ever know the disaster that had been averted. Returning to the safe house, Luna allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. She checked communications, confirming that the threat had been contained and that all agents were accounted for. David approached, leaning against the doorway. Every mission you lead, Luna, it's like watching a clockwork mechanism in motion. Precise, unyielding, and completely invisible. Luna regarded him thoughtfully. That's the point. Leadership isn't a performance. It's a responsibility. If we are seen, we become targets. If we are invisible, we become protectors. Her eyes scanned the dimly lit room, maps and monitors reflecting soft light across her face. The world doesn't need to recognize what we do. They need to survive because of it. David nodded, understanding that for Luna, the measure of success was never acknowledgement, only outcomes, safety, and the quiet certainty that invisible leadership shaped the world in ways the public would never notice. A few days later, Luna received an unexpected visit from one of the cadets from the parade ground, a young woman named Mara, who had asked to meet her privately. "Commander Reyes, I wanted to ask you something." Mara began nervously. Luna gestured for her to sit. "Go on." Mara's voice was trembling. How do you stay calm, even when everyone is against you? When you were stripped of your rank, Luna smiled faintly, recognizing the mixture of fear and curiosity. Control begins with understanding yourself and your environment. Panic comes from assuming the world is bigger than your decisions. Calm comes from knowing exactly what you can influence and what you cannot. Leadership isn't about approval, it's about action. Mara nodded, absorbing every word, as Luna continued. You will face moments when everyone doubts you. That is when your judgment matters most. Remember that authority is not the loudest voice. It is the voice that guides the unseen, the voice that shapes outcomes when no one else is watching. The following week, Luna coordinated an operation involving multiple regions simultaneously, a complex web of surveillance, interception, and coordination. Agents reported in real time, following her precise instructions. Luna moved between monitors, adjusting strategies based on live intelligence. Timing is everything, she reminded her team. One wrong move and the consequences are catastrophic. Keep your focus. Ignore distractions. We are not here to be recognized. We are here to ensure survival. David watched her quietly, impressed by the effortless efficiency of her leadership. Every command Luna issued was measured, deliberate, and delivered without ego. She maintained a presence that inspired confidence, even when the entire operation remained invisible to the outside world. By the end of the day, multiple threats had been neutralized without a single casualty, and once again, the public remained oblivious, while Luna's quiet authority ensured the stability of countless lives. Despite her successes, Luna remained vigilant. She continued to study intelligence reports, refine operational protocols, and mentor her team. In quiet moments, she reflected on the parade ground incident, considering the lessons learned and how they applied not only to her team, but also to the cadets who had witnessed her public challenge. She understood that her work was as much about shaping future leaders as it was about averting crises. The ripple effects of her actions extended beyond immediate missions, cultivating understanding of leadership that transcended rank, ceremony, or recognition. Luna Reyes had become more than an officer. She was a model of unseen influence, a quiet architect of resilience and justice. Months later, Luna received confirmation that Colonel Linton had officially left the command, reassigned to a distant post with limited responsibility. The change brought subtle shifts at the academy, though the cadets remained largely unaware of the full truth. Yet the seeds Luna had planted during her demonstration of leadership endured. Cadets began to question assumptions, think critically, and act decisively in the absence of constant supervision. Luna knew that her influence was invisible but effective, and that true leadership was rarely measured by visibility, applause, or ceremony. She watched the next generation of cadets and saw hints of quiet courage, resilience, and the ability to act beyond the surface of authority, a reflection of the lessons she had imparted without words. Only example. On a quiet evening, Luna and David reviewed intelligence updates from several global regions, planning contingencies for potential crises. You never rest, do you? David asked with a faint laugh. Luna shook her head, calm and focused. Rest is irrelevant if lives are at stake. My work is not about comfort or recognition, it's about effectiveness. Every choice I make has consequences. Every delay could be catastrophic. David nodded, understanding the weight of her responsibility. And yet, you inspire people without even trying. Luna's gaze was steady, her tone reflective. Inspiration is a byproduct, not a goal. Leadership exists in the space between chaos and order, and it thrives in silence, not applause. That is the lesson that lasts. As night fell, Luna Reyes looked out over the city from the safe house, the lights twinkling like a fragile web of lives protected by choices unseen. She thought back to the parade ground, to the cadets, to Colonel Linton, and to every covert operation she had led since. Everything was connected by a thread of quiet authority, resilience, and meticulous judgment. Her work would continue, unrecognized by most, but no less vital. True leadership, she knew, was measured not in titles, ceremonies, or public praise, but in the courage to act when no one is watching and the wisdom to guide others without the need for recognition. Luna Reyes turned away from the window, ready to face the next mission, a silent guardian shaping the world from the shadows, embodying the principle that strength and justice often grow unseen, yet their impact is undeniable. The next morning, Luna convened a quick briefing with her inner team in the safe house, the air still heavy with the calm tension that always preceded a mission. Intelligence suggests that a rogue faction is planning to manipulate communications networks in the northern sector, she said, pointing to a digital map that flickered under the dim light. If they succeed, they could trigger misinformation, chaos, and unnecessary casualties. We will intercept quietly, neutralize the threat, and leave no trace that we were here. Her team listened in silence, absorbing every word, knowing Luna's plans were precise and unforgiving of error. A young operative raised his hand hesitantly. "Commander, the faction has guards with lethal training. What's our approach?" Luna's eyes narrowed slightly, though her voice remained calm. "We move like shadows, anticipate every reaction, and control every outcome before it can manifest. If we must confront them, it will be swift, surgical, and decisive. Hesitation is the enemy." The operative nodded, a mixture of awe and fear flickering across his expression. Luna then paused and added, almost as an aside, "Remember, the world will never know what we do. That is the mark of success. And remember, trust in each other. Doubt is a luxury we cannot afford." Her team absorbed this, the weight of responsibility settling like a quiet storm in the room, each agent aware that their decisions, invisible to the world, carried enormous consequences. By late afternoon, Luna and her team had infiltrated the northern sector. Shadows stretched across narrow alleyways and rooftops as she led her operatives through precise routes, avoiding surveillance cameras, patrols, and civilian contact. "Keep your eyes sharp and your mind sharper," she whispered, moving with a silent rhythm that seemed almost instinctive. A comms device crackled briefly, and one agent reported a minor deviation in patrol patterns. Luna adjusted their path instantly. "Deviation acknowledged. We will bypass quietly, maintaining distance and timing. No unnecessary engagement. Our objective is prevention, not spectacle." Hours passed with careful observation, the team navigating tight spaces with meticulous attention. Finally, they reached the central communications hub where the rogue faction intended to initiate their plan. Luna's gaze swept the perimeter, noting every guard, every shadow, every risk. Then she whispered, "Move. Neutralize, disable, exit." The team executed flawlessly, dismantling the threat without alerting anyone outside the operation. Luna cataloged every detail, noting both successes and areas for refinement. Once the operation was complete, she allowed herself the faintest exhale, her calm exterior never breaking, yet internally satisfied that catastrophe had been averted entirely unseen. Back at the safe house, Luna debriefed her team. "You performed flawlessly," she said, though her tone carried no praise beyond acknowledgement. "Remember, the objective is survival, precision, and discretion. The fewer witnesses, the stronger our impact." One of the agents asked, hesitantly, "Commander, when does the world ever recognize us for these things we prevent?" Luna shook her head slowly. "Recognition is irrelevant. Our measure of success is quiet, invisible. Every life protected, every disaster averted, every threat neutralized. That is the reward." Public acknowledgement is temporary. True leadership persists regardless of applause. David, standing nearby, nodded in silent agreement, understanding that Luna's philosophy was the foundation of every mission, every decision, every risk they had ever taken. Invisible, yet decisive, he murmured. Luna offered a small, thoughtful smile, returning her attention to the maps and live feeds, already planning contingencies for potential ripple effects of today's operation. She thought of the cadets, of Mara, and the parade ground long ago. Her actions now were extensions of the lessons she had begun teaching years before. That strength is often quiet, courage often unseen, and leadership does not require recognition to exist. Late that evening, Luna walked through the empty streets near the safe house, her boots silent against the asphalt. The city seemed calm, unaware of the threats that had nearly disrupted it. David followed at a discreet distance. Do you ever think about how differently things would have gone if the cadets or Linton had known the truth earlier? He asked softly. Luna considered this for a moment. Perhaps, but the lesson would have been lost. Authority observed, without context, is shallow. They needed to witness, not understand immediately. True comprehension grows over time. Her eyes scanned the horizon, the glow of the city lights reflecting a quiet beauty she rarely allowed herself to notice. Leadership is like this city, she continued. On the surface, it's orderly, visible, and predictable. But beneath it, networks run quietly, risks are managed, and decisions are made in shadows. That is where true responsibility lies. David nodded, absorbing the depth of her insight. Luna paused, allowing the night to settle around her like a cloak. Every operation we conduct, every precaution we take, ensures that what remains visible continues uninterrupted. We are the unseen guardians. That is our duty, and that is our success. As the night deepened, Luna returned to the safe house, reviewing mission data one last time before resting. She allowed herself a quiet moment at the window, observing the city's endless lights and the subtle rhythms of life continuing uninterrupted. In her mind, she reflected on the parade ground, the cadets, Mara, and the countless operations that had defined her path. Her work would never be recognized in headlines or medals, but she understood that real strength and leadership existed precisely in the space between danger and prevention, between action and visibility. Luna Reyes had become more than a sergeant, more than a commander. She was a living embodiment of the principles she had taught, that courage, resilience, and justice are most powerful when they are unseen. And with that thought, she turned away from the window, prepared to face the next mission, confident that every quiet decision she made shaped the world in ways no one outside her circle would ever realize, yet whose impact would be undeniable.